On Saturday, January 9th of 2016, friends of Fred Turton gathered at Rudyard's Pub, where he bartended for nearly 2 decades, to celebrate his life and share memories, anecdotes, and stories about him.
This has been tough for many, many people. Fred had a very iconic personality, which is something, if you mention to him, well, he wasn't big at slapping people, but he would disdain you pretty good. He would kind of go like this.
Fred was one of the most real persons I ever met. He, and Doc explained him pretty well, that turning his head and just kind of walking away. He didn't have to say, screw you. He did it. Somebody mentioned that Fred, Helga Beermeister, and Drew Bradford, and I'm going, well, I'd like to meet those people. Well, the only thing that showed up was Fred. And he was such a treat.
Fred took me hunting one time, and we shot Bammy, but boy, could he make some venison.
Another good story to tell is I took some dart lessons from Fred once, and I was going all over the board. And Fred said, Soul, what are you doing? And I was doing all this other stuff, and he's like, Soul, you, the dart, the board, throw it. Very simple, straightforward way of looking at things. Not, full of all this complicated stuff like our lives in Houston are. After he said that, I started hitting where I needed to go. So Fred kept things simple, straightforward. I think a very good lesson for all of our lives.
There are several stories of how the Montrose Beer and Gun Club idea first sprang up, and surely, though, we can all agree that it happened in the Rudyard's ghetto, while Fred was either bartending or standing on the other side of the bar. This is where creative people bantered and smart-assed their way through many an evening. It was sort of like the Bohemian artists did in Paris in the 1920s. One thing is certain, Fred took the Montrose Beer and Gun Club concept and ran with it. He made it into both a literary legend and also a damn fine fundraising organization. Fred wanted to leave something behind, and he proved to us all that you don't have to be wealthy to do so. Well, kids, I wish things were better, but look around you. We're all a little better for having known you, Fred. And by the way, you definitely had class. You definitely were somebody.
I remember sitting down in the red zone with Fred when he gave out our Montrose Beer and Club membership cards, and I have mine laminated. It's member 002, and we were one of the 5 original members, and it got started from when we used to go meet here, several of us, and when we go down to the gun range and go shooting, then we come back and drink beer and brag about it. And then, of course, Fred took it brilliantly and said, what if we did the opposite? We drank beer first, and then we went go shooting, and then didn't brag about it or miss it or screw up somewhere. So that's where the Montrose Beer and Gun Club idea came from. But Fred took it right out there and did beautifully.
I illegally entered a bar called Rudd's in about 1979. I was 16. One of the first people I ever met was Fred at Rudyard's, and he wanted to teach me dart throwing. But where I want to go with Fred is that Fred was a very artistic person. He was an artist, and his mind was very creative. And I think that even before the Montrose Beer and Gun Club, we could see a spark of creativity that lit up everybody's life, because he has led us through his light to a better world for all of us. Thank you, Fred. You were more like a father figure to me. Bye.
I got into the Montrose Beer and Gun Club and got to meet Fred a few times, and he was always come over and check out our trophies, and he'd go, these are really nice. He'd fondle our trophies and walk away, and it was an annual thing every year for Fred to come up before it started and to touch our trophies and admire them.
part of Fred's legacy is the nature of having a cook-off where you don't go down to the rodeo and have a miserable time. You go to the backyard or the West Alabama Ice House and you have a marvelous time. Everybody's got a smile on your face. You've got jalapeno margaritas. That is the legacy that Fred has blessed us with. Thank you.
Since 1987, I've known Fred, even earlier than that. He invited me to join his dart team because he thought I could throw. I'm sorry, because the first game of the season, I showed up with a broken leg, and he didn't kick me off the team. And we wound up earning one of the tallest trophies in the house. Sat up there for 20 years almost. Fred's a swell guy. He put up with me many, many nights when he shouldn't have.
Fred was one of the real people. You knew exactly where he was. He was genuine, no BS, no phoniness. Get to the chase, tell it like it is. I'll miss him dearly, and his legacy lives on. One of the things that Fred told me early on was, you know, you're gonna find out that the first 10 years of owning a bar, they're the hardest. After a while, I basically bought the building and did an expansion, and in doing that, at a certain point, we moved forward and we expanded, and we got to a point where I brought in a POS system. I think some of you know how this goes. The POS system that I first brought in was the Aloha system. So Fred came in one day and he said, you know what I found interesting? He's like, the word aloha, it means hello and goodbye. He's like, I've put up with everything you've done, but this is, I'm done. Aloha. I said, okay. I said, okay, Fred, I can dig that. I can dig that. And, you know, that's probably the last time he was on this stage up here was for his retirement party. And he had been a bartender at Rudyard's at that point for 17 years.
Right, we had a rock and roll gig scheduled, and the guy who was in charge of the rock and roll band was late, and we were just hanging out, and we started playing jazz, and Fred heard it and said, let's start doing this every Thursday. And that's how Necessary Attention started. It was really kind of Fred's whole thing, really, really was, and this whole thing is, you know, thank you so much, Fred. We miss you so much, and you know, very often, Fred was very particular about what he liked in jazz, so he wouldn't always come out and say we sounded good. But when we were kicking it really hard, he would come out from behind the bar, leave his customers, and come out and right up to the bandstand and scream and howl. And it was just a wonderful thing. But he was very particular about when he would do that. So we had to be playing good, you know, to that. So Fred again. Here's to Fred. We miss you so much. Thank you so much.
The first time I went with the Montrose Beer and Gun Club to give money to Make-A-Wish, I was verklempt. I was choking up, imagine that. And couldn't quite get the dollar amount out, and Doc was giving me a Kleenex, and Fred was standing there looking at me like, come on, Foreman, tell them what they won. So I gave all the checks to the Make-A-Wish, and then I had Fred's check in my pocket, stuck deep in my jeans pocket, and I was crying, and I was telling him, like, we raised $17,000, blah, 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 whatever the number was. And then I reached in my pocket after it was over and pulled the Fred check out, and he was like, you know what? I think you were crying because you wanted to keep that check for yourself.
And I said, Fred, you know, we should probably get together and have a big old cook-off or something, and just, you know, big old party and stuff with all barbecue with all the people that are involved. And he said, Jim, don't you, Mr. Settles, don't you realize this is a purely fictitious organization? I said, Fred, I can look around and see 30 people around here that are card-carrying, shirt-toting members. Or is it shirt-wearing, card-toting members? Can't quite remember. But anyway, days go by, and about a year later, he came up with the idea of doing it. And that's always good, because if it's his idea, he wants to do something, then get him to come up with an idea and follow through. And that's when we finally decided to go ahead. Yes, this can be done. We can have a benefit to raise money for the kids.
In the meantime, I looked around for a place to eat, and I'd come around the corner, and what did I stumble into? But Rudd's. And I said, this benevolent-looking fellow looking down at me with a mug of beer in one hand, and the wind was kind of moving him back and forth and saying, come on in, you found the place. So I went in, and I don't really know anybody here, and I've just been here for a few days. I just moved here. And he said, well, then you better join the Montrose Beer and Gun Club. Well, I had nearly a fit of laughing, right? And he said, just look us up on the internet, look for the Montrose Beer and Gun Club, right? You'll find us.
I met Fred about 18 years ago, and I actually think I met him at Cecil's, not at Rudd's. And I introduced myself, said, hi, I'm Erica, and he goes, I'll never forget your name. My favorite niece is named Erica. And at that moment, he took me under his wing as if I were his niece. And he took my husband, Mo, under his wing, and we were friends for a long time. Good night, Fred. Miss you. Bye.
Fred had a nice effect on people, and he was like a philosopher king. He said a couple of things that always stuck with me. One is that we're just pond scum. And that's the way he looked at life and living. He said, I follow the people. What the people wear, I wear. What the people talk about, I talk about. So, thanks, Fred.
We're here to celebrate the life of Fred Turton. He was a man who never judged anybody. He let you be an asshole all on your own. He touched all of our lives, and he brought us all together, and he made us all better people. To Fred Turton.
We want to thank you guys for coming. Thanks for the food, all the guys who donated the food. Thanks Lilia, Rudd's, you guys have done everything. This is one of Fred's places where he started, and more importantly, we just want to thank you guys for coming, and we really appreciate it, and we couldn't do it without any of you guys and all of you guys, so thank you so much, okay?